morning, everybody. As we live life and have certain experiences, there's no doubt things we come across, but we recognize that certain things just appear to go together. They belong together. In time, because of this commonality and pairing, they begin to be associated with each other. And you may be able to think of certain things, or certain things may resonate with you. I'll give you some examples. Peanut butter and jelly. They just go together.
No, I don't like it.
Yes, I think they go together.
Well, whether you feel that in a culinary fashion that they should be together, they've been working together for years. And hence, that association has become cemented. Another duo in the culinary form would be macaroni and cheese.
I think you too.
These guys have been working with each other for some time. Again, there's a pairing. Things just seem to go together, and it begins to resonate with us. Batman and Robin. It's understood. We just have that connection. And then, of course, you will have pairings that they go together, and initially you may look at it and go, I don't see how that works. Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart.
Really?
Many may be unfamiliar, but they've been partners for a very long time, and they have had great success on television and in a lot of their projects. You would never pair those two together. Then there are other pairings that perhaps some in the room it may not resonate with, but as I said, it comes from exposure and experiences.
Yes, sir.
Where you begin to go, yeah, that goes together. Chicken and waffles. Now, for many, that may not resonate. But if you're from the South, it hits home. Fish and grits.
Yes.
Again, those in the room it may not resonate with. But again, if you're from the South, these are pairings that you're familiar with.
Yeah.
Many may not even be a fan of grits if you even know what grits are. It may be more of a Southern thing. And then again, when it comes to experiences, perhaps even age, the room may not know who Luke and Laura is. But if you grew up here back in the 80s or so and you're familiar with a lot of the soap operas, there was a connection. Well, being that we're in church, of course, I'm going to propose or suggest a pairing that's going to have some sort of biblical association. And as I mentioned before, there may be some pairings that you would not think they go together. My personal pairing would be spaghetti and frankfurters. No bread, just spaghetti and the hot dog. And I'm seeing faces like, ill, that's nasty. You have no idea. That is crazy, spaghetti and frankfurters. Try it. Dare I say, try it tonight.
The right sauce?
Whatever sauce you choose. Nevertheless, I am going to propose to you, I submit to you, that another pairing that we may find they actually go together would be faith and secrets. And again, it's like, what? Faith and secrets don't go together. And some may say that. And in actuality, we have those that are more vocal in their profession of God that would say, never that. Oh, I love me some Jesus. I'm going to let everybody know. It's not going to be a secret. I'm not going to hide it. And I'm not talking about that kind of vocal expression or that exterior element of professing an attachment to God. No, I'm talking about something deeper, a more intricate internal process. And logistically, we understand that you need to have God's Spirit in order to have your mind be able to process the things of God, and then thereafter be able to alter and change and revamp the way you think, and then revamp your behavior, and then maintain a relationship with God. And that is done selectively. It is not done broadly. God is not calling everyone. And we see that in Isaiah 6. Isaiah 6. And I'm going to start in verse 9. Isaiah 6 and in verse 9. Here God is issuing to Isaiah, he's giving him a job. He's issuing him an assignment. Isaiah 6 verse 9, he said, "Go and tell this people, be ever hearing, but never understanding. Be ever seeing, but never perceiving." People will be exposed, and they're going to hear things of God, related to God, and it's not going to resonate. It's not going to invoke a change. They're not going to understand it on the spiritual level. They're going to see certain things, and again, it won't resonate. It's not going to hit home that to the degree that they're going to change and be committed to God and following God. Continuing on in verse 10, "Make the heart of this people calloused, make their ears dull, and close their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and by extension their minds, and as a result, turn and be healed." Here we have God acknowledging they're not understanding because their ability to understand has been turned off, has been closed temporarily. They're not able to process what they're seeing because that ability also has been hampered. God is full aware. And this just is a testament to the fact that not everyone is being called right now. Not everyone is going to be able to benefit from this process, which in turn makes Isaiah ask a question. He's hearing, I'm going to tell you to go to a group of people and tell them what I'm saying, but they're not going to understand you. And I want you to demonstrate what I'm saying, but it's not going to make any sense. So he's being given this assignment, and he's told they can't understand and they won't understand. And Isaiah then replies, well, how long is this going to last? Can you imagine telling your kids to do something for their good? Eat your vegetables, but it's not going to do anything. Go to bed at a decent time, but it won't make a difference. You can't eat the chocolate cake for dinner, but there's absolutely no reason why. Doesn't compute. At least it wouldn't to a child's mind, or an adult's for that matter, if you have no explanation, not one that makes sense. But in this case, it's the plain and simple fact is that everyone is not being called right now. So God's response to Isaiah's question, verse 11, "Then I said, 'For how long, Lord?' And he answered, 'Until the cities lie ruined and without inhabitant, until the houses are left deserted and the fields ruined and ravaged, until the Lord has sent everyone far away and the land is utterly forsaken. And though a tenth remains in the land, it will again be laid waste. But as the terebinth and oak leave stumps when they are cut down, so the holy seed will be the stump of the land.'" In the translation, until this, just everything that could go wrong goes wrong. And after everything that can go wrong goes wrong, and everyone that you're speaking to and their descendants have been removed from the land, there's going to come a point in time when they'll come back. And this is speaking towards the end of the age. And even though Israel and remnants of Israel and Judah were removed from the land, and even though some of them came back, they still got ransacked again by the Romans. And even though there are people there now, under the name Israel, their minds are still closed and their eyes still don't see. So that doesn't satisfy what this scripture is saying. No, in the end time, God will repopulate that area. And those that he had a relationship with under the name Israel, he will again reconnect with.
Yes,
in addition to the rest of the world. So when is this going to end in answering Isaiah's question? At the end of all of this nonsense. That's when it ends. At the end of this process. But in the interim, there's still work for those that God is working with to do. But we see this is happening under a blanket of secrecy, where no one seems to know what's going on, where no one is aware, where the majority of people are not hearing and they're not seeing. And if you don't see and you don't hear, then you don't know. And if you don't know, then it's been kept secret from you. Hence, secret. God is utilizing and he has allowed secrets to exist. Now, if someone were to approach you and ask if you could keep a secret, it's understood that that information is not going to be widely disseminated. Depending on how old you are, you may need to run to the police. You may find yourself in a position where you're being groomed for being receptive to behaviors that are not proper. Hence, can you keep a secret? Can you take this information, this understanding? Can you practice certain behaviors and not tell anybody? With a child, yeah, that's dangerous. But with an adult, are you cool like that? Can you keep a secret? Can I trust you with certain information at work? Or are you going to go run tell that? Run and tell the supervisor. When you're a child, you always had that one person in your group, in your association, amongst your siblings or cousins. They can't keep a secret. They're going to go run and tell. Nevertheless, we see that there's this mechanism by which information is disseminated, but it's not meant to be shared with everyone. And that information is meant to be used for the hearer, the receiver, only. Hence, secret. Matthew chapter 13. Matthew 13 and in verse 10. The disciples came to him, meaning Jesus, and asked, "Why do you speak to the people in parables?" He replied, "Because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of God, has been given to you, but not to them." It wasn't supposed to be widely distributed. You needed a passcode.
Yes, sir.
In order to have access. You needed security clearance.
Yes, sir.
By way of being called by God the Father, receiving God's Spirit, and utilizing it to understand God's Word, to understand how to approach life, and then being able to implement that in the way that you think and the way that you live. So this information is limited to those God is working with. And outside those God is working with, there appears to be secrecy behind this understanding. John chapter 16.
Yes.
John 16 and in verse 1. Here Christ tells his disciples, "All this I have told you, so that you will not fall away. They will put you out of the synagogue," or you're going to be disconnected or rejected from the religious establishment. You're going to be seen as you're going rogue. You're not going to be in line with the main source of popular Christianity going forward, or the synagogues in terms of the religious institutions of their day. They will put you out of the synagogue. In fact, the time is coming when anyone who kills you will think they are offering a service to God. They will do such things because they have not known the Father or me. Again, secrecy. The world at large will be unaware of who the true responders of God are. And they will be unaware of the mechanisms that the true responders of God employ in maintaining a relationship with God. Paul, or the writer of Hebrews, acknowledged that such people do indeed go unnoticed, unrecognized. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 37.
Yes, sir.
Paul is speaking of a number of people that emulated faith. They showed faith. And as a result of employing that faith and following it and allowing it to guide their behavior, they weren't given a stamp of being successful in the world. They had issues, they had problems, they had great difficulties. And Paul listed many of these out. Starting in verse 37, they were put to death by stoning, they were sawed in two, they were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. This is not lifestyles of the rich and famous. They weren't living their best life according to the world. Paul continues, verse 38, the world was not worthy of them. They were too good for the world.
Yes, sir.
They didn't belong there. You ever recognize people when they get fired on the way out, they break everything they can, and they utter, I didn't like this job anyway. And it's that sense of, I'm too good for you. You don't deserve me. And Paul is saying that's how Christians, true Christians, those that really connect with God, that's how they fit in this world. They're not recognized. The world doesn't understand what's really happening. It's a secret. So these people have faith. But when you have faith, it also implies that there's behavior behind that. In James chapter 2, he speaks about how faith is connected with behavior. And that if you have faith, you're going to behave a certain way, and that you're going to follow what God says.
Yes, sir.
And the inverse is true. If you're going to follow what God says, then that shows that that commitment and engaging in that behavior is an aspect of faith.
Yes.
James chapter 2, verse 26, as the body without the spirit is dead. If there's no spirit in the body, then the body's not working. If there's no ignition, or in today's world, if there's no electricity, then your Tesla car doesn't work. If there's no ignition, the car doesn't work, it doesn't function. If your phone has no power, then it's not going to be on. Likewise, faith without deeds, without works, without behavior is dead. It's something that doesn't work. It doesn't have anything that is going to engage. There are no logistical properties behind that. It doesn't work. Without faith, without believing, you can't have behavior. If you do have behavior, which these true Christians had, because they had faith, you're going to see that demonstrated in what it is that they do. Matthew chapter 6. Matthew 6 and verse 6. We see an example of how those that do follow God have behavior as a result of their faith. Matthew 6 and in verse 6. But when you pray, when you engage in this verb, this action form of behavior, because of your faith, as an extension of your faith, that you are engaging in because you do have faith. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you.
Yes.
So here we have a secret within a secret. We have individuals that are going unnoticed, unrecognized, and the process in which they've embarked upon is a secret. A process that they've engaged in because of their faith in God, and it's going unrecognized by others. They don't see it. They don't know it. The world at large. And the individuals that are engaged with God, practicing what God has commanded and exhibiting the behavior that is initiated by their faith, are doing such things in secret. Again, unnoticed, unrecognized. Staying in chapter 6, dropping down to verse 17. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. Now, you have individuals that say they know God, but do they truly have ID? You have a number of people that will impersonate an officer. In fact, it's a crime. But if you don't have the qualifications and legitimate paperwork and documents to show that you indeed are an officer of a particular institution, the government, the law, then you're a fraud. You need ID. And there are many people that profess to be Christians. We look at popular Christianity and we can see people that may not practice what Christ truly said to do, but yet they will call themselves a Christian. You have individuals that go through the rituals of what Christ said to do, and yet they're not truly engaged with God, for real, for real. They're faking the funk. Again, I'm talking and referring to those that are truly engaged in that process. When you look at the parable of the sower, you see seed that is thrown onto the ground. And that seed lands on various landscapes. But recognized, one landscape in particular was intended to receive the seed. It was predetermined that seed was going to go there. It was already tilled, and the ground was already prepared to receive seed on purpose, intentionally. That space, and that space only. Granted, the seed fell in other places. It wasn't about the other places. You didn't intend for the seed to go there. You knew seed would go there, but your focus is on that ground, that space, that plot that had been prepared to receive that seed, and that space only. If you ever do gardening, if you ever have a yard, you plant seed in a certain space. Seed may very well land up on the concrete, on the walkway, on the driveway. That's not when you intended it to go. You're not paying attention to the seed on the driveway. You're not paying attention to the seed on the walkway. You're just paying attention to the seed that you fertilized the ground for. That's the place you're going to water. You're not watering the driveway. You're not watering the rocks. And that's what happens to this seed, this information about God, this exposure to God and his ways. It fell into these various other places, and it was received accordingly. They weren't able to engage with it the way that land that was meant to receive the seed will. It was prepped for that. It was intentional that it would go there. Likewise, this aspect of exchange with God is meant for certain individuals only, those that have been prepped. And it is a secret from the rest of the world. That seed that fell everywhere else, when you threw it down, that landed on your driveway, that landed on the steps, for all intents and purposes, what's going to go on with the land that you intended it to land on, the space that you're going to water, the space that you drop the lime on so the birds wouldn't eat it, the space where you drop the fertilizer, the manure, that's a secret to the driveway. That's a secret to the seed on the steps. They didn't get that exposure. They're not getting the lime. They're not getting the fertilizer. Nobody's throwing manure over there on the steps, on your driveway, because it's not meant for that. And so, most are unaware of how this process works. It's done in secret. And those to whom God is working with whom God is working with, those that are following their faith by engaging in the behavior that God commands, they are the recipients of this understanding, of this knowledge. Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11 and in verse 39. Here, Paul again refers to these individuals of faith that God is engaging with in secret. These were all condemned for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised in secret. The promises of God are not known by man on the whole. It's a secret. Since God had planned something better for us in secret. What God has planned is not widely known. It's a secret. Only shared with those that have faith.
Sure.
And by extension, engage in that faith with behavior
Amen.
that makes it so they can connect with God.
Amen.
These were all condemned for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. And this process is indeed a secret.
Amen.
Revelation 10, verse 7. At some point, these things will come to fruition. The things that God is working on is going to become evident, it's going to become obvious what we were being made into. Verse 7 says in Revelation chapter 10, but in the days when the seventh angel is about to sound his trumpet, the mystery, the secrets of God will be accomplished, just as he announced to his servants, the prophets, unbeknownst to the rest of the world. To the prophets, one of which being Isaiah, who was told, you're going to go and say what I'm telling you to say, and they're not going to understand. They're going to see, and they're not going to comprehend, because it's a secret, only meant for select individuals to understand. This same verse, Revelation 10, verse 7, read from the contemporary English Bible, says God told his secret plans to his servants, the prophets, and it will all happen by the time the seventh angel sounds his trumpet. Another iteration, Young's literal translation. But in the days of the voice of the seventh messenger, when he may be about to sound, and the secret of God may be finished, as he did declare to his own servants, to the prophets. And so we see there truly is a correlation between faith and secrets, where at first glance it may not seem that faith and secrets go together any more than spaghetti and hot dogs. But I attest to you, spaghetti and hot dogs that's amazing. You have no idea. And many others outside of us are unaware of how faith and secrets go together. But in our life, in the way we live, in the way that we function, we should be more coherent and understanding of how indeed faith and secrets truly do go together.